Welcome to Coffee with Clover. Thank you for joining us today. Please help me welcome my first guest. She is a grief recovery coach, Kristen Fry. Kristen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Clover. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Okay, I know for life situation, people go through different emotions, then comes sadness, and of course, grief set in. So you're one who specializes in dealing with grief. How do you do that?
That's a great question, and it's actually a really confusing question for a lot of people. So I'm a life transformational coach. I deal with people that are going through transitions in their life, and that can be any manner of events that we have. A lot of these events, there's like more than 40 life events that can create feelings of grief. And so I help people discover and then recover what those feelings are, and to be able to complete their feelings that they have, the painful emotions around the loss of any kind.
How do you do that? There are different tools that you apply.
Yes, so as I said, there's more than 40 life experiences that can create grief. And most times people, when we talk about grief, they attribute it to a death or a divorce. But there's all manners of these events that can cause that. So retirement, job loss, health changes, financial changes, empty nesting when our kids leave. So there's all these events that can create feelings of grief. And what we tend to do is we intellectualize it. So we get in our heads about it, we understand what's happening, we accept what's happening, what's going on, and we feel like we've moved on from it. But the problem with that is that it's not our head that's broken, it's our heart that's broken. And so when we aren't dealing with those emotions that have come up and we aren't able to complete them, they actually compound and they stay with us as we go through life. So if you want, think of it like wearing a backpack, that every time we don't complete a loss, there's a rock that goes into that backpack. And then we carry that backpack with us into the next event until there's another loss. And we keep adding rocks to the backpack, and the pack gets heavier and heavier. But what happens is we adapt to the load, and so we think that's normal. And so we adapt, but we're not necessarily healing. And so I help people with that.
You mentioned retirement, and I'm thinking, retirement, you should be happy because you're leaving, you're going to be free now. How can someone grieve on retirement?
It's a great question. And so that's the thing with grief, we understand it as a normal and natural reaction to a loss, but it's also the conflicting emotions and around something coming to an end or a change in a familiar pattern of behavior.
That part of it.
Yes, and so what happens is when you retire, sure, a lot of people think, now I have more freedom to do the things that I want to do. But if you've worked for a company for 20, 30 years, and you're used to going to that same place, and you identify with that job that you have, so it's a loss of identity, what you've been doing for all these many years. It's all the relationships that you've had with the people within your work that you will no longer have those relationships. And so people don't think about that as they go into retirement. Now, some people are great and they have plans and they've moved forward, but it's funny that after a couple of weeks, which would be sort of a normal vacation period of time, people start to realize like, oh, I'm having these feelings of I'm kind of sad, or I don't understand why, because I should be happy. And this is what we're talking about in terms of those conflicting emotions, which are completely normal.
Do you see it very often in your practice?
I do, and actually it's interesting because I'm a coach, and so I see people for life coaching, and what happens is usually when people come to see me, it's because they're stuck in some aspect of their life. And so when we take a really good look at that, oftentimes there's an unresolved grief that's at the bottom of that. So when we can help people resolve the grief, then it allows them, it frees them to actually be able to live their life fully expressed and free.
But then when you're taking them back, because they have to open up for you to get into what's going on. So they're reliving the moment. Oh, I worked here for 40 years and I'm not there anymore. Are there ways to prepare people before they get to retirement of what to expect?
Yes, and that's the whole conversation, is that understanding that it's going to be a change, like honoring where we've come from and all the relationships that we've built in the working environment that we had, all the people that we've seen every day, you know, the person we get our coffee from on lunch hour, all those kinds of things, those relationships will come to an end. So really it's just the identifying that, and it's really opening up the discussion on grief, because people talk about grief and it seems like this heavy, sad subject, and it can be heavy in all fairness. But at the same point, we're human beings and we're meant to experience all the spectrum of human emotions. So when we don't allow ourselves to feel grief, we kind of suppress those emotions, because we've been given a lot of misinformation over time. Even when we were little kids, you know, big boys and big girls don't cry. So we've been taught to suppress those emotional feelings, and we've been taught it's bad to feel sad or angry or any of these other sort of negative emotions, if you wanted to put a label on it. But we're meant to feel them. They're natural emotions, and we're actually meant to experience them, move through them, and then move beyond them. And so when we suppress and keep things inside of us, what happens is that will compound over time. And we've gotten really good at being able to build those tools to keep in our analytical mind about it. But inevitably, those will leak out somewhere, and we see it in our health, we'll see it in our finances, in our relationships. So it's really important that we actually address a loss or the feelings that we're having attributed to a transition or a change that we're having in life, because it's an important part to look at that.
Yeah, most of the depression moments are like loss of a relationship, the death in a family. But even if one is prepared, you don't know what it's like until you've gotten there.
100%. Right. And this is where we get into that misinformation as well. So grief is completely about, everybody's grief is completely unique and individual to them, because your relationship to the person is completely unique to you as well. So for example, in a family, if you've lost a family member, each of those people in that family may grieve completely differently, because each of them had a completely different relationship with the person that has passed. And so some people might be quite emotional, some people might not be emotional at all and feel more comfortable isolating themselves. And that again feeds into the myths that we've had around grief for so long, which are don't feel bad, replacing the loss, you know, be strong. That's a message that I know I heard growing up.
It's easy to say, but it's hard for the person that's
100%, and that's all misinformation. It keeps us separate as opposed to actually looking for the support and help that we may need. And it doesn't allow us to actually be a support for those people that are going through a loss of that kind. Stay busy, grieving the loss alone. Those are all things that we've learned over time that actually keep us separate and keep us from being able to move through that process in a healthy way.
So I guess first thing you have to own up to it, that I'm grieving, accept that you're grieving. Then I have to tell you my story, so I'm reliving it. How long does it take for someone to heal?
So I can't answer that question, because again, it's subjective for every person, and we all have our own time frame to go through it. But time, and the fact that time heals all wounds, is also one of the misinformation or myths that we grew up with. So it's not specifically time passing and then you heal, it's the action steps that you take within that time that get you to that healing place. So a great analogy for that is if you had a flat tire on the side of the road, and so you sit down and you're looking at that flat tire, wishing that air would get back in there, you might be waiting there a really long time. But if you got on the phone and called CAA, or if you were capable enough and had the tools to take the tire off and replace it yourself, you put the tire back on and you're on your way. It's taken some time, but you've also taken action to get you on your way. And that's exactly what the grief recovery method is about. We help people discover what is incomplete for them in the relationships that they had, and then we take specific action steps to help them move through that process, and then they are able to complete what was incomplete for them emotionally with that relationship.
Has it surprised you, though, the different types of emotional situations that have been presented to you? Like, you must have known of a few. People grieve for death, they'll grieve for relationship, like you mentioned, retirement. Are there new ones that wows you that you would never thought?
Well, before I came to grief recovery myself, so I've also gone through this process, you know, so I'm not only just a coach, but I'm also someone that has now the tools that will allow me to address any losses that come forward in my life from this point on. And it's interesting, everybody's so unique, and really it's an honor to walk with people on their path, and I don't do the work for them, they do the work. So the grief recovery method is actually a very simple process, but it's not always easy for exactly the reasons that you said. So having someone to be a strong support for you, to guide you through those action steps as you take them and be there for you is really, really important. So it's a real honor for me to be able to help people through their experiences and help them get on through the other side of loss.
Do you find that even though we cannot put a time frame on it, do you find folks who you think probably within 6-8 months they would have gone past a certain stumbling block? They can't move on to the next process because they haven't gotten over the first one. How do you deal with that? So you have to go back and be repetitive to help them to heal.
So again, for the process, like my process that I take people through in terms of the actual grief recovery method is an 8-week process. And so we meet weekly, and there's action steps that will be taken, and there's homework for the person to do. So really it requires somebody who's open and willing to do the necessary work to move them beyond their loss. So I can't honestly answer that, right, from that, because everybody's so unique. So some people, having gone through this experience, there's a relief and a healing that happens throughout the process. It's hard to explain. And then from that particular relationship, that relationship is healed, and that also changes the energy that you have around it. So even if the relationship was with someone who's still living, you know, or someone that you even still live with, so parents with children or anything else like that, you can shift that environment and shift that energy without even having to talk to that particular person. But because now you've changed on an energetic level and a healing level, it shifts something, the dynamic in that relationship.
Okay, it's time to take a quick break. Next to come, the vision board that will help you heal. Don't go away. Welcome back. Now for the happy moment after grief recovery. So Christian, how does it work with the vision board?
So I offer, one of the programs that I offer is something called the Create Your Life Vision Board Workshop. So I often run these workshops on Sundays. I also do them as privates for people. And what that is it runs from 10 to 5 during the day that we decide to run it. And so it really is about people tapping into the power of their conscious mind to create the changes that they want to see in their life, whether it's for this next year. But vision boards aren't just for the new year. They're great for any time you're going through a transition or changing your life. So birthdays are a great time. If you're retiring or getting in a new relationship, about to start a marriage, anytime that there's a change, it's a really good time to do a vision board.
Oh, so a vision board party.
Yeah, so it's so like a workshop, and so you can totally create a party with your friends if you want to. I can totally arrange that with people that are interested in doing a private. So what it is that it starts off with a writing exercise that I send out a week before. And what that does is it allows people to answer 10 questions that maybe they haven't asked themselves recently. They're very simple questions, but we haven't often given ourselves the time to answer them. So it allows our conscious mind to start thinking about, oh, what is it that I actually do want? Who do I want to be going into this year next? What are the things I want to do? What do I want to have? And get real clear and have a full intention about what they want moving forward. So that seed starts to plant in the subconscious mind, so that when we come together on the day that we do the workshop, the morning is spent in conversation. So we discuss what is clarity and what is a clear intention. Because a lot of people know how to goal set. We do it for work all the time. But intention is something different. It calls something more from us. And so people know what they want to create for themselves, but a lot of times there's a clarity piece that's missing. And so we really hone in on the clarity and understand what it is and why, who do we want to be and why as we move forward in our lives. And so, and then there's another writing exercise, there's a meditation involved as well. And then we break for a great healthy lunch, which I prepare. And then the afternoon is spent creating your vision board. But now it's done from a place of a more powerful and clear intention as you move forward.
So does everyone have the chance to say what's on their vision board, where they're at and where they want to go openly in the meeting?
They can, or they don't have to. Like, you don't have to share anything that you're not willing to. And some people are a little more shy and don't want to. But what I find in these days is that we actually end up making up our own little community. So even if people are strangers when they come in the day, by the end of the day, we've really bonded as people. And it's not just for women. I have men coming out for my vision board workshops pretty regularly now too, which I love that. I think it's amazing. And so it's really working on the power of visualization and how that works with the power of our own mind. So we have a reticular activating system, which called RAS, which is just a network of neurons that's located in our brainstem. And so what that does is it filters out all the information that we're bombarded with every single day. Because if we took in everything, our brains just wouldn't be able to handle, it would be too overwhelming. So the RAS is actually based on our own belief system. So when we get really clear about what it is that we want, and because our conscious mind has the power to focus, and it also has the power to visualize, which is to create something, a mental image for something that isn't even real. So as kids, we did it naturally with imagination, but we've lost that ability as adults. So that's the thing. Visualization is a practice. So it's exercise for the brain. I call it training the brain. So similar as if you would train your body to go to the gym, you're not going to see results if you don't go on a consistent basis and really focus on what you're doing. It's the same with creating change in your life, that you have to be able to create the focus of what you want, that clear intention, add the emotional energy behind it, really feel what it is that you want to create for yourself as if it's already happened. And the more that we do that on a regular basis, then that's when change starts to happen in our life. Our beliefs are different. The vision board itself, when we construct it, is just a tangible tool so that you have something to focus on daily if you wanted to, which is what I recommend. And it just helps us with our focus and with that practice of visualization.
Okay, so you construct it at the workshop, you take it with you.
Yes.
Do you do a follow-up?
Yeah, so I touch base with people regularly. In fact, I'm running a workshop at the end of the month, and I have people that did their vision boards last year that have pretty much manifested everything on their boards, and now they want to think big for next.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Wow.
So one of my clients, her dream goal was to work out in Vancouver, and she had some very specific items that she wanted attached to it. So she's living in Vancouver, negotiated an increase in her salary. She's living a great life. And so just the one component missing is she's just still waiting on that partner.
Oh, okay. So do you find people, before the vision board, they knew what they wanted, but just wanting to find a way to get it out? And with your intervention, they finally got what they wanted on paper, looking at it and execute it?
You know, that's such a great question because, yeah, we know things what we want in our own mind, but we're so busy and we're distracted by so much. And that's the thing. We're so distracted by the things around us. We don't take the time to sit down and like journal or meditate or visualize what it is that we actually want to create for ourselves in our lives. So this allows people to tip their toe in, if they haven't done that before, of what that actually means and what that looks like. And then by the time you take your vision board home with you at the end of the day, I always suggest you put it up in a place where you can see it daily. Mine hangs in my office, and I look at it every day as I'm having my coffee or my tea. And so it's just that way of like setting myself and reminding myself of who I want to be and why I want to do the things that I want to do and why I want to have the things that I have as I move on into my life.
Do you have a I've got what I wanted vision party graduation of such? That would be fun.
It would be fun, and actually I'm going to steal that idea and take it. That's a great idea.
Yeah, have a graduation. At least if folks have accomplished what they wanted, it's something to celebrate.
It absolutely is. I couldn't agree more.
So that's the biggest part of healing. So do you find anyone that have been to the vision board still find that, oh, there was something that I haven't opened up, I still need to deal with it?
I think people come to that in their own realization, and I have noticed that. So there are people that come to the workshop and like all of a sudden these things, it's not all of a sudden these things are happening for them, but they are able to manifest those things that they wanted in their life because they have that clear vision. And they attach that emotional piece to it, which is an important part of it. You need to feel it. As well as be thinking it. And so sometimes it's slower for people because they either quite don't believe or they're not practicing the visualization or those things that help remind them of what it is that they want in their life, and that's okay. We all come into our things in our own time, but yeah, there's definitely a difference. And so just like anything that works for us, it's that consistent practice that gets us the results that we're looking for.
Okay, create your own vision board and see your desires come to life in this new decade. That's it for Coffee with Clover. Thank you for watching. See you again next time.